There's a specific kind of smell that doesn't just hit your nose, it sticks to the back of your throat. It's thick, sour, and heavy, like something that died a long time ago but refused to stop rotting. Now, imagine waking up to that smell every single morning, not because there's a dead animal in the walls, but because the person who gave birth to you is sitting 10 feet away. How do you tell your own mother that her presence is physically making you gag? How do you survive in a home where the very air feels like it's poisoned, and the only person who can fix it thinks you're the one who's crazy? My life isn't a horror movie, but sometimes, when the wind shifts in our small apartment, I really wish it was. Because at least in a movie, the credits eventually roll. In my world, the door stays open, the stench stays constant, and the screaming never stops. I remember the first time I realized our house wasn't like other people's houses. I was young, maybe 6 or 7, and I invited a friend over after school. We walked through the front door and she stopped dead in her tracks. She didn't say anything at first. She just kind of crinkled her nose and asked if we had a plumbing leak. I felt this hot, prickly wave of shame wash over me, even back then. I didn't know how to explain that the smell wasn't coming from the pipes. It was coming from the woman sitting on the couch in a stained nightgown. The woman who hadn't moved since I left for school that morning. That was the last time I ever had a friend over. Now, at 18, that shame has grown into a permanent weight in my chest. A heavy iron anchor that keeps me pinned to a life I never asked for. Every morning starts the exact same way. I wake up on the couch in the living room, because that's where I sleep, and the first thing I feel isn't the sunlight or the sound of birds, it's the wall. Not a physical wall, but a wall of scent that has drifted from her bedroom through the hallway and settled right over my face like a wet blanket. It's a mix of old sweat, unwashed skin, something metallic, and a deep, fermented funk that I can't even put into words. It's the smell of years of neglect. It's the smell of a human being who has given up on the very concept of hygiene. She leaves her bedroom door open. Always. It's like she wants the house to be consumed by her. If I even suggest closing it, if I so much as reach for the handle to give myself a pocket of clean oxygen to breathe while I try to exist, the peace is shattered. She doesn't just get annoyed, she explodes. It starts with a low growl from the darkness of her room, and then she's up, her crooked leg dragging slightly as she lunges toward the doorway, screaming at the top of her lungs. She'll tell me I'm trying to suffocate her. She'll tell me I'm disrespecting her in her own home. The irony is so thick you could cut it with a knife. She thinks a closed door is an assault, but the cloud of rot she forces me to inhale is just fine. "It's all in your head," she'll shout, her face turning a blotchy, frantic red. "You're just like your father. You're always looking for things to complain about. I don't smell anything. You're the one who's sick." That's the gaslighting. It's her primary weapon. She spent years convincing herself that she's a victim of my sensitivity. But I know I'm not crazy. I know it because my clothes carry the scent to school, to the store, to the few places I escape to. I've seen people at the grocery store take a step back when I stand in line. I've heard the whispers. I've seen the way my friends' expressions change when I walk past them after being stuck in that house all weekend. I am 18 years old, and I feel like a leper. My mother is what I call a human amoeba. She doesn't live, she just occupies space. She doesn't work, she doesn't cook, and she certainly doesn't clean. She spends nearly 24 hours a day in that bed, staring at a TV screen that's constantly blaring some mindless show, surrounded by the debris of her life. And in all the years we've lived together, through all the milestones and the long, quiet nights, I have never once, not a single time, seen her take a shower. I think she might wet her hair in the sink once a month, if she's feeling ambitious, but the rest of her? It's a tragedy of grime. The most frustrating part isn't even the smell anymore. It's the total, soul-crushing lack of a mother. Since I was a kid, she's looked at me with this simmering resentment. I was dad's girl. Because I got along with my father, because I saw the world the way he did, she decided I was the enemy. When he left, she didn't step up to fill the void. She retreated into the mattress and took her hygiene with her. She rejected me when I needed a parent, and now she expects me to be the one to maintain the household while she rots in plain sight. I try to stay out as much as possible. I'll walk for hours, go to the library, sit in a park, anywhere where the air moves freely. But eventually, the sun goes down and I have to go back. I have to walk through that door, hold my breath, and run to my PC. That computer is my only lifeline. It's the only place where I'm not the girl who stinks. Online, I can be anyone. I can be clean. I can be free. But the moment I take off my headset, the reality of the room hits me again. I've tried to help. God knows I've tried. I've bought her soaps. I've left magazines about health on her nightstand. I've tried to gently bring up the idea of seeing a doctor. I thought maybe it was depression or a physical ailment she was hiding. But every attempt at a rational conversation ends in a theatrical meltdown. She cries like a 15-year-old girl who's been told she can't go to the prom. She wails about how nobody understands her and how everyone is out to get her. It's a performance designed to shut me up, and it works, because how do you argue with someone who has completely abandoned reality? And then there's the extended family. My grandmother. She's the one who holds the strings. She pays the bills, she buys the food, she keeps the lights on. To the outside world, she's a saint, helping her struggling daughter. But to me, she's the jailer. She knows what's happening. She can smell it too when she visits, though she pretends she can't. But the rule is clear. Do not betray the family. If I were to call social services, if I were to reach out to a mental health professional and tell them the truth, that I'm living in a biohazard, my grandmother would cut me off in a heartbeat. She sees it as a betrayal of blood. She'd rather I choke on the fumes of my mother's mental illness than deal with the shame of a public intervention. I am trapped in a cage made of biological waste and family secrets. I'm 18, and instead of dreaming about college or a career, I'm dreaming about the smell of laundry detergent. I'm dreaming about a room where the door can be closed and the air is empty. But as I sit here on this couch tonight, listening to the muffled sound of the TV through her open door, I realize that the green cloud isn't just around her anymore. It's starting to feel like it's swallowing me, too. The smell doesn't just sit in the air. It lives in the fabric of everything we own. I've tried washing my own clothes 3-4 times in a row with the strongest scented beads I can find, but it feels like a losing battle. It's like the house itself is exhaling. I can scrub the floors until my knuckles bleed. I can spray entire cans of air freshener until I'm coughing from the fumes. But within 20 minutes, her scent, that heavy, sickly sweet rot, creeps back in. It's a physical presence, a ghost that refuses to be exorcised. Sometimes I find myself standing in the middle of the kitchen, just staring at the wall, wondering if the drywall itself has soaked up years of her neglect. When people talk about hoarders, they usually talk about stacks of newspapers or boxes of junk. My mother is a hoarder of her own filth. She collects it on her skin, in her hair, in the very sheets she refuses to change. I remember once, about a year ago, I gathered enough courage to try and strip her bed while she was in the bathroom. It was the only time she'd been out of that room for more than 5 minutes in a week. I pulled back the comforter, and I actually had to step back and cover my mouth. The sheets weren't white anymore. They were a dull, greasy gray, stained with the outline of her body. It looked like a shroud. Before I could even grab the corners to pull them off, she was there. She didn't even have to say anything. The way she looked at me, with this primal, territorial snarl, told me everything. She lunged for the bed like I was trying to steal her most prized possession. "Don't touch my things," she screamed. "You're always trying to change everything. You're trying to make me feel small." That's her favorite defense, that I'm trying to make her feel small. To her, hygiene is a power struggle. If she washes, I win. If she stays dirty, she maintains control over her environment, even if that environment is a literal biohazard. It's a level of mental illness that I can't wrap my head around, and what makes it worse is the total lack of support. My grandmother, her mother, is the architect of this nightmare. Every Sunday, she calls. She asks if we need groceries, if the bills are paid, if everything is okay. And every Sunday, I want to scream into the phone, "No, it's not okay. Your daughter is rotting alive, and I'm breathing her in." But I can't, because I know exactly what would happen. My grandmother belongs to a generation where family business stays behind closed doors, no matter how toxic that business is. To her, my mother isn't mentally ill. She's just going through a hard time. A hard time that has lasted for over a decade. If I even hint at the smell or the state of the house, my grandmother's voice turns cold. "She's your mother," she'll say, her tone clipped and sharp. "You should be grateful you have a roof over your head. Don't be ungrateful, or you might find yourself without one." It's a threat. A polite, grandmotherly threat. She's the one who pays for this apartment. She's the one who funds my mother's sedentary lifestyle. If I betray the family by calling for professional help, I'm the one who ends up on the street. I'm 18, I'm still in school, and I have zero safety net. I am effectively being paid in rent to watch my mother disintegrate. The social isolation is the hardest part. I'm at an age where I should be having people over, watching movies, maybe even dating. But how do you bring a guy home when the hallway smells like a morgue? How do you explain that the woman screaming at the TV in the other room hasn't seen a bar of soap since the last administration? I've had to become a master of excuses. My house is a mess. My mom is sick. I have a lot of homework. Eventually, people stop asking. They see the shadows under my eyes. They smell the faint, lingering scent on my jacket that I can never quite get rid of, and they just drift away. There was this one time, a few months ago, when I had to take the elevator with her. We rarely go out together, but she needed to get to the car for a rare trip to some specialized store she saw on TV. We stepped into that small mirrored box, and the moment the door slid shut, the air vanished. It was just us and her odor. It was so concentrated in that tiny space that I felt my stomach flip. I stared at the floor, praying the elevator would move faster. Then, the doors opened on the second floor. A woman and her young son were waiting to get on. They stepped in, smiling, but the smile vanished from the woman's face within a second. She didn't even try to hide it. She pulled her son closer to her and covered her nose with her hand, looking at my mother with a mixture of horror and pity. My mother, of course, acted like nothing was wrong. She just stared straight ahead, her crooked leg slightly bent, her greasy hair matted against the back of her neck. I wanted the ground to swallow me whole. I wanted to scream, "I'm not with her! I'm clean! I promise I'm clean!" But I just stood there, burning with a shame so deep it felt like it was etching itself into my bones. When we finally got to the lobby, I ran. I didn't even wait for her. I ran out into the fresh air and took deep, gasping breaths, trying to purge the feeling of that elevator from my lungs. When we got to the car, it wasn't any better. The car is hers, and because she rarely leaves it, she treats it like an extension of her bedroom. The upholstery is stained, the floorboards are littered with old fast food wrappers, and the smell. It's trapped. It's baked into the seats by the sun. I sat in the passenger seat with the window rolled all the way down, even though it was raining. "Roll that window up," she barked. "You're letting the rain in. You're going to ruin the interior." "I need air, Mom," I said, my voice shaking. "I just need a little bit of air." "You're being dramatic," she snapped, her eyes narrowing. "You've always been so dramatic, just like your father. You think you're better than me, don't you? You think you're so clean and perfect." That's when I realized. She knows. On some deep, buried level, she knows she smells. She knows she's living in filth. But she's turned it into a weapon. She uses her own degradation as a way to test my loyalty. If I can tolerate the smell, I love her. If I can't, I'm a traitor like my dad. It's a sick, twisted logic that keeps her safe in her bubble of rot. Sometimes I look at her when she's sleeping, or resting as she calls it. She looks so small in that big, messy bed. I see the woman she used to be in old photos. Someone who smiled, someone who wore clean clothes, someone who held me when I was a baby. And then I look at the human amoeba in front of me, and I feel nothing but a cold, hollow rage. I don't feel sorry for her anymore. I don't feel love. I just feel like I'm waiting for her to finish what she started, which is slowly erasing herself from the world. But she's taking me with her. Every day I spend in this house is a day I'm not living. I'm just surviving. I'm an 18-year-old girl who spends her nights researching how to get the smell of decay out of polyester, and her days wondering if I'll ever be able to breathe without checking the air first. The worst part is the silence from the rest of the world. I feel like I'm shouting underwater. I've tried to hint to my teachers, to my few remaining friends, but how do you describe a situation that sounds like it belongs in a Victorian asylum? People don't want to hear that a mother can be this way. They want to believe in the nurturing figure, the one who cleans your scrapes and makes you soup. They don't want to hear about the mother who screams because you tried to change her bed sheets. I'm standing at a crossroads, and every path looks like it leads to a cliff. I can stay and watch her rot until the smell finally seeps into my soul, or I can leave and lose everything. My grandmother has made sure of that. It's a choice between my sanity and my survival, and every morning when that first wave of scent hits me, I realize I'm running out of time to choose. Sometimes I wonder if the walls of this apartment are crying. Not with water, but with the condensation of our shared misery. There's a specific layer of grime that builds up on the windows, a gray, oily film that no amount of glass cleaner can truly banish. I used to think it was just city smog, but now I know better. It's the physical manifestation of her existence. A residue left behind by a person who has stopped participating in the world. I find myself scrubbing the kitchen counters at 3 a.m, not because they're dirty from cooking, we barely cook, but because I can feel her presence on them. It's a phantom itch, a desperate need to erase every trace of her from the spaces I have to occupy. My mother's physical state is something out of a medical textbook on neglect. She has this minor physical disability, a crooked leg that makes her walk with a slight hitching limp. She's not in a wheelchair. She's perfectly capable of walking to the bathroom or the kitchen. But she uses that leg as a shield and a sword. It's her ultimate excuse for why she can't wash, why she can't stand up to brush her teeth, why she needs to spend 22 hours a day fused to the mattress. She has turned a minor ailment into a total identity of helplessness. To the world, she's a poor woman with a disability. To me, she's a human amoeba, a creature that has shed every human trait except the ability to consume and complain. I remember a few years ago, I tried to make a spa day for her. I was younger then, more optimistic. I thought if I made it seem like a luxury rather than a chore, I could trick her into getting clean. I bought expensive bath bombs, soft towels, and the kind of high-end shampoo that smells like a botanical garden. I spent my own meager savings on it. I set everything up in the bathroom, lit a candle to mask the smell of the room, and went to her bed. I used my soft voice, the one I used to use when I was a little girl trying to get her to look at my drawings. "Mom," I said, gently touching her shoulder, "I made the bathroom really nice for you. Everything's ready. Let's just get you into the tub for a little bit. You'll feel so much better." She didn't even look at me. She kept her eyes glued to the TV, where some daytime talk show was blaring. "I'm tired," she muttered, her voice thick and raspy from disuse. "My leg hurts. You're always pushing me." "It's just a bath, Mom. I'll help you. Please, just once." That was the trigger. The amoeba vanished, and the banshee took its place. She sat up with a speed that defied her supposed disability. Her eyes went wide, and she started to wail, Not cry, but a high-pitched, keening wail that sounded like a wounded animal. "You're trying to kill me!" she screamed, the sound echoing off the bare walls of her room. "You want me to slip. You want me to break my hips so you can send me away. You're just like your father, trying to control me, trying to tell me I'm dirty. Get out! Get out of my room!" She started throwing things. Old magazines, empty soda bottles, whatever was within reach of her bed. I stood there, holding a fluffy white towel, feeling the heat of the candle from the bathroom behind me, and I realized then that she didn't just have a hygiene problem. She was defending it. She was protecting her filth like it was a sacred boundary. I blew out the candle, threw the shampoo in the trash, and didn't mention a bath again for 2 years. The memory of social services haunts me. When I was maybe 8, someone, a neighbor, a teacher, I don't know who, called them. I remember 2 women in sensible suits coming to our door. They looked concerned. They walked through the house, taking notes on their clipboards. My mother put on the performance of a lifetime. She wore a cleanish sweater for once. She sat on the couch with her leg propped up, and she spoke in a soft, trembling voice about the struggles of a single disabled mother. The house didn't smell as bad then. It was just starting. My grandmother had come over the night before and spent 8 hours scrubbing the place, top to bottom. She had threatened my mother, told her that if the authorities took her child, the money would stop. So, for one day, we were a normal family. I remember the social worker looking at me, asking if I was fed, if I was happy. I looked at my grandmother, who was standing in the kitchen doorway with a look that could freeze fire. I looked at my mother, who was dabbing her eyes with the tissue. "I'm fine," I said. It was the first big lie of my life. The social workers left, satisfied. The moment the door clicked shut, my grandmother exhaled a cloud of cigarette smoke and turned to me. "Don't you ever," she whispered, her voice like grinding stones, "bring shame on this house again. We take care of our own. You remember that." And we did. We took care of our own by letting the rot settle in. I think that was the day my mother realized she was untouchable. As long as she stayed within the 4 walls of the apartment, as long as the bills were paid by her mother, she could do whatever she wanted. She could stop trying. And she did. She stopped cooking. She stopped cleaning. She stopped being a mother and became a permanent fixture of the furniture. She blames me for our lack of a bond. She says I chose my father. My father was a man who worked 12 hours a day and actually knew how to use a shower. He left when the screaming got too loud and the smell got too thick. I don't blame him. I wish he'd taken me with him, but he was broken in his own way, and the legal system isn't kind to fathers who want to take their kids away from disabled mothers. So I stayed. And because I missed him, because I talked about him, she decided I was a traitor. "You're just a guest here," she tells me whenever I try to suggest we change the air filter or vacuum the living room. "This is my house. If you don't like the way I live, you can leave." But she knows I can't. She knows I'm trapped by the same financial chains that keep her fed. We are 2 people tethered together by a grandmother who prizes family image over human dignity. It's a sick ecosystem. My grandmother pays for the food, my mother eats the food and stays in bed, and I am the one who has to carry the trash out, wondering if I'm carrying out pieces of my own future with every bag. The atmosphere in the house is heavy, literally. In the winter, when the windows have to stay shut to keep the heat in, the smell becomes a physical weight. It's warm and humid, like a greenhouse for bacteria. I spend my nights on the PC, wearing a headset with the volume turned up to drown out her TV, but I can't drown out the air. I've started putting a little bit of peppermint oil under my nose, just so I can breathe without gagging. Sometimes I look at her from the hallway. This woman who is essentially a stranger to me. She's staring at the screen, her face illuminated by the flickering blue light. Her skin has this yellowish, waxy sheen to it, the kind you see on people who never go outside. Her hair is a bird's nest of knots and grease, and she looks content. That's the most horrifying part. She isn't suffering. She has everything she wants: a bed, a TV, and a daughter she can scream at whenever she feels a flicker of her own inadequacy. I'm 18. My life is supposed to be starting. But when I look at her, I feel like I'm looking at my own finish line. I'm terrified that if I stay here much longer, the green cloud will finally sink into my pores, and I'll wake up one day with a crooked leg and a refusal to move. I'm terrified that I'm becoming an amoeba too, just one that knows how to use the internet. There's a specific kind of humiliation that comes with realizing you've become a carrier. It happened a few months ago, on a day that should have been normal. I was sitting outside a cafe with a girl I'd started getting close to, someone I actually thought I could be friends with. The sun was out, the air was crisp, and for a moment I forgot about the apartment. I forgot about the amoeba in the bedroom. We were laughing, talking about music, and then the wind shifted. I saw her nose wrinkle. It was subtle at first, just a slight twitch, like she'd caught a whiff of something unpleasant from a nearby trash can. But then she leaned in closer to tell me a secret, and she froze. She didn't even finish her sentence. She just kind of recoiled, her eyes darting to my jacket and then back to my face. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I've ever heard. "Is everything okay?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. My heart was pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. She hesitated, her face turning a sympathetic shade of pink. I don't want to be mean," she whispered, "but is there something on your clothes? Like, did you spill something? There's this really strong smell. It's kind of like old food, or maybe a wet dog." The world tilted. I felt that familiar hot surge of shame crawl up my neck. I couldn't lie anymore. I couldn't pretend it was a plumbing leak or a messy neighbor. I looked down at my hands and felt the weight of my entire existence settle on my shoulders. "It's my mom," I said. My voice was flat, devoid of any emotion, because if I let even a spark of feeling through, I would have started screaming right there in the middle of the sidewalk. "She doesn't wash herself. I try to keep my stuff clean, but the smell, it's in the walls. It sticks to everything. I'm sorry." The look she gave me wasn't one of disgust. It was worse. It was pity. Pure, unadulterated pity. "Oh, honey," she said. "I had no idea. Is she sick?" "She's something," I muttered. That was the end of that friendship. Not because she was mean about it, but because I couldn't look at her again without remembering that look of pity. Now, whenever I'm out, I'm constantly checking myself. I sniff my sleeves every 10 minutes. I carry a bottle of perfume in my bag and douse myself in it until my skin stings. But I know, deep down, it's just a mask. I'm 18, and I have to explain to the world that my mother is a cartoon character with a green cloud of rot around her. Yeah, sorry, my mom doesn't wash herself. I can't do anything about it. I've said that sentence so many times, it's lost its meaning. It's like saying the sky is blue or the grass is green. It's just a fact of my life. But every time I say it, I feel a little more of my dignity chip away. I'm forced to be the spokesperson for her filth. I'm the one who has to handle the awkward questions, while she sits in her nest of greasy sheets, blissfully unaware, or worse, totally indifferent, to the fact that she's turned her daughter into a social pariah. People make fun of her. I've heard the whispers when we walk to the car. I've seen the neighbors point and laugh behind their curtains. They call her names I won't even repeat. And the most heartbreaking part? She doesn't even realize it. Or she's so deep in her own mental fog that she thinks they're the ones with the problem. She has no friends. No one ever calls her except my grandmother. She has no life outside of that bed and that TV screen. She's 18 years older than me, but emotionally, she's stuck at 15. That's the hardest thing to explain to people. They say, just talk to her. She's your mother. She'll listen. They don't understand that talking to her is like talking to a toddler in the middle of a grocery store tantrum. If I try to be rational, she starts screaming. If I try to be gentle, she starts crying hysterically. There is no middle ground. There is no adult in the room. I am the one who has to be the parent, but I have none of the authority and all of the consequences. I'm certain she has serious mental health issues. It's not just laziness. No one lives like this by choice. But she refuses to see a doctor. She refuses to see a psychologist. I think, deep down, she's terrified of them. She's afraid that if she lets a professional in, they'll see through the Disabled Victim Act and tell her the truth, that she's destroying herself and her child. So she stays in her fortress of grime, protected by her own refusal to acknowledge reality. I've watched the cycle of our family for years, and it's a horror story in itself. My mother's mother, my grandmother, did everything for her. She babied her, she cleaned up after her, she enabled every bad habit and every excuse. And now, she expects me to do the same. She wants me to step into the role of the lifelong caretaker, to spend the best years of my life wiping down counters and breathing in rot so that she doesn't have to feel the shame of a daughter in a psychiatric facility. She's family, my grandmother says. We don't abandon family. But what about me? Am I not family? Does my life not count because I'm the one who's sane? I refuse to do it. I refuse to become the next link in this chain of misery. I've watched what it did to my grandmother. The bitterness, the way she uses money to control everyone because it's the only way she knows how to hold the family together. I'm not going to spend my 30s, 40s, and 50s waiting for a woman to take a shower. There is no mother-daughter bond between us. That ship sailed a long time ago. All the years of rejection because I liked my father more, all the years of her choosing her own comfort over my well-being, it's left a hole where the love should be. I don't want to understand her. I don't want to work on our relationship. I just want to be able to take a deep breath in my own home without feeling like I'm inhaling a graveyard. I'm at my wit's end. I've tried everything. I've tried logic. I've tried anger. I've tried silence. Nothing works on an amoeba. It just sits there, absorbing everything you throw at it and staying exactly the same. Every night, I lie on the couch and stare at the ceiling. I can hear the hum of her TV through the wall. I can smell her through the open door. And I realize that I'm not just fighting a smell. I'm fighting a legacy. I'm fighting the idea that I owe my life to a person who won't even lift a finger to wash her own skin. I'm 18. I'm young. I should have my whole life ahead of me. But right now, my world is only as big as this living room, and it's getting harder to breathe every single day. I don't know how much longer I can survive this before I either disappear or turn into exactly what she is. The kitchen used to be a place of neutral ground, or at least that's what I tried to tell myself. But lately, even the act of making a sandwich feels like an intrusion into a biohazard zone. I find myself standing at the counter, holding my breath, moving with a frantic speed, just to get my food and get back to the safety of my PC. If I stay in the common areas too long, I start to feel the grime settling on my skin, like a fine mist of grease and failure. And then there's the sound. The sound of her dragging that crooked leg across the linoleum. A rhythmic scuff, thud, that signals the end of my piece. She doesn't come out to eat with me. She comes out to scavenge. She'll shuffle into the kitchen, her nightgown, the one she's worn for 3 weeks straight, clinging to her in a way that makes my stomach turn. She won't look at me, but she'll start opening cabinets, looking for something easy, something she doesn't have to cook. And the smell. When she moves, it's like a physical punch to the gut. It's not just unwashed skin anymore. It's the smell of a stagnant pond, of something that has been forgotten in the back of a damp closet for a decade. Could you at least put on a clean shirt, Mom? I asked her the other day. I tried to keep my voice steady, devoid of the judgment I felt boiling in my chest. Just for today, it might make you feel better. She stopped mid-shuffle. her shoulders hunched up to her ears, a classic sign that the amoeba was about to transform. She turned toward me, her eyes red-rimmed and watery, her face twisted into a mask of pure, unadulterated hurt. "Why do you hate me so much?" she whispered. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. "Every day you pick at me. Every day you tell me I'm not good enough. You think I choose to be like this? You think I like having this leg? You're just like your father. You want to strip away every bit of dignity I have left." "Dignity?" I snapped, the frustration finally leaking out. "Mom, there is no dignity in not showering for years. There is no dignity in making me live in a house that smells like a landfill. I'm not picking at you. I'm trying to survive you." And then came the theatrics. She didn't just cry. She collapsed into a kitchen chair and began to wail. A loud, jagged sound that filled the small space until I felt like my head was going to explode. She rocked back and forth, clutching her crooked leg as if I'd physically struck it. "I can't do anything right. My own daughter wishes I was dead. I should just stop eating. I should just go into the woods and disappear." It's the emotional maturity of a 15-year-old, exactly like the Reddit posts say. It's impossible to have a rational conversation because she uses her emotions as a shield. If I'm right, she's hurt. If I'm logical, she's bullied. She has learned that if she screams loud enough and cries hard enough, the conversation has to stop. And it does. I walked out of the kitchen, leaving my half-made sandwich on the counter, because I couldn't stand the sound of her self-pity for one more second. The most isolating part of this entire nightmare is the betrayal of my extended family. My grandmother is the one who keeps this engine running. She's the one who pays the rent, the one who ensures my mother never has to face the consequences of her choices. I've tried to talk to her, really talk to her. I sat her down in her own pristine, lemon-scented living room and told her everything. I told her about the smell, about the screaming, about how I spend my nights wondering if I'll ever have a normal life. My grandmother just looked at me over the rim of her teacup, her expression as hard as flint. "She is your mother," she said, her voice dropping into that dangerous low register. "She has a disability. Life has been hard on her. And if you think for 1 second that you are going to bring some government stranger into our business, you are sadly mistaken. You call social services, and you are calling the end of your support. Do you understand me? We do not betray our own." The word betray rang in my ears for days. To them, the betrayal isn't the neglect. It's not the fact that a mother has effectively abandoned her child's well-being for the sake of her own laziness and mental fog. No, the betrayal is talking about it. The betrayal is wanting a life that doesn't smell like rot. My relatives have created a vacuum around us, a pocket of silence where my mother is allowed to disintegrate as long as she does it quietly and privately. They would make my life a living hell if I ever sought outside help. They would paint me as the villain, the ungrateful child who turned on her disabled mother. I feel like I'm living in a parallel reality. On the internet, people talk about boundaries and leaving toxic situations. But in my world, there is no exit. I am 18, I have no money of my own, and I have a family that views mental health care as a shameful secret to be buried. I am the only one who sees the green cloud for what it is. To everyone else, it's just mom being mom. I've started to notice small things about myself that terrify me. I've started to become obsessive about my own hygiene. I shower twice a day, sometimes 3. I scrub my skin until it's raw, terrified that even a hint of her will linger on me. I find myself checking the mirror constantly, making sure I don't look greasy, making sure my clothes are perfectly pressed. It's a reaction to the chaos, a desperate attempt to prove that I am not her. But in the back of my mind, there's a voice that whispers, "How long until you give up? How long until the weight of this house breaks you too?" She refuses to see a doctor. I think she knows that a doctor wouldn't just look at her leg. They'd look at her skin, they'd smell her breath, They'd ask about her daily routine. They would see the amoeba beneath the surface. And she can't have that. She needs to be the victim, the misunderstood woman with the crooked leg. If a doctor told her she was physically capable of bathing, her entire world of excuses would crumble. So she stays in bed, watching her shows, letting the smell grow thicker and the room grow darker. I see her in the car sometimes, just sitting there. She never goes into the stores. She just sits in the passenger seat, scrolling through her phone, surrounded by the trash she refuses to throw away. She looks like a ghost that has forgotten how to haunt. And I'm the one left to deal with the wreckage. I'm the one who has to explain to the neighbors why the trash is piling up, why the windows are never open, why the girl who lives in 4B always looks like she's on the verge of a breakdown. Everyone makes fun of her. I see the snickers at the grocery store when she has to go in for something. I see the way people give her a wide berth in the hallway. They don't see a struggling mother. They see a woman who has given up on the basic tenets of being human. And because I'm with her, they see me the same way. I am the daughter of the stinking woman. That is my identity. That is the legacy my family is so desperate to protect. I'm tired. I'm so tired of the trying to understand. I've spent years trying to find the why behind her behavior. Was it the divorce? Was it her own childhood? Does it even matter anymore? Understanding doesn't change the fact that I can't breathe. Understanding doesn't take away the shame of knowing that my friends avoid me because they don't want to smell my house on my hair. I refuse to take over her life. I refuse to be the caretaker that her mother was for her. But as I look at the door to her room, that open door that lets the rot spill out into my sleeping space, I realize that the only way to survive this is to find a way out that doesn't involve the family I have left. I am 18, and I am already mourning a life I haven't even started to live. The air in our apartment has a weight to it that you can't understand unless you've lived it. It's not just a scent, it's a texture. In the heat of the summer, the humidity binds with the grease and the rot, creating a haze that I swear I can see when the light hits it just right. I call it the green cloud, but sometimes I think of it as her soul, slowly leaking out of her body and filling up the rooms until there's no space left for me. I spend most of my time huddled in the corner of the living room, my face pressed as close to the window crack as I can get it, just trying to remember what oxygen feels like. There was one night, a few weeks ago, when the smell became a physical assault. It was raining outside, so I couldn't open the windows more than a sliver, and the heat was cranked up. My mother had spent the entire day in her nest, and for some reason, the stench had turned acidic. It was sharp, like ammonia mixed with sour milk. I woke up at 3 a.m., gagging. I actually had to run to the bathroom and heave into the sink. The smell followed me there, clinging to the towels, the shower curtain, the very air. I went to her door. I didn't want to, but I was desperate. I stood in the threshold, looking at the dark shape of her under the covers. The TV was on mute, casting a flickering, ghostly blue light over the piles of laundry and old plates that littered the floor. "Mom," I whispered, my voice cracked and raw. "Mom, please, I can't breathe. Can we just close your door? Just for tonight? I'm getting sick." She didn't move at first. Then, slowly, the cover shifted. She didn't sit up. She just turned her head toward me. In the blue light of the television, her eyes looked like two dark pits in a face that hadn't seen a washcloth in a year. Her skin was oily, reflecting the screen, and her hair was a matted halo of gray and brown. "You're always so dramatic," she croaked. Her voice was thin, but it had that sharp edge of malice she reserved just for me. "You're always trying to make me feel like a monster. It's my house. If you don't like the air, stop breathing it." "I'm literally throwing up, Mom. This isn't about drama. It's about basic human decency. You're living in filth, and you're dragging me into it with you." That was the mistake. Using the word filth. She sat up then, her crooked leg swinging out from under the blankets like a heavy, dead thing. She didn't stand, but she leaned forward, her face contorting into that hideous, infantile mask of rage. Filth? You think I'm filth? After everything I've sacrificed for you? After I stayed here, struggling with my health, while your father ran off to live his perfect little life? You're just like him. You see a weakness and you want to stomp on it. It's not a weakness to take a shower, Mom. It's a choice. You're choosing to live like this. Get out, she screamed. It was that high-pitched, shattering wail again, the one that makes the neighbors knock on the walls. Get out of my room! You're attacking me! I'm being attacked in my own home! I backed away, not because I was afraid of her physically, she could barely walk, but because I was afraid of the sound. I was afraid of the sheer, unbridled madness in her eyes. I went back to the couch and pulled the blanket over my head, but the smell was already inside the blanket. It was everywhere. I spent the rest of the night sitting on the floor by the front door, my nose pressed against the gap where the hallway air leaked in. I stayed there until the sun came up, crying silent, angry tears, realizing that I was essentially a prisoner in a tomb. The next day, my grandmother called. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask if I'd slept. She went straight to the point. Your mother called me, she said, her voice cold and disapproving. She said you were being cruel to her last night. She said you were screaming at her about her disability. I wasn't screaming about her leg, Grandma. I was talking about the smell. I was throwing up because she hasn't washed in years. You know this. You've been here. I don't want to hear it, my grandmother snapped. She is a sensitive woman. She has been through a lot. You are young and healthy. You should be helping her, not making her feel worse. If I hear one more report of you harassing her, I'm going to have to reconsider the living arrangements. I won't fund a household where my daughter is being bullied by her own child. And there it was. The ultimatum. The living arrangements. It's the leash that keeps me tied to the rot. My grandmother knows exactly what's happening, but she's decided that a peaceful home is one where the victim stays quiet and the perpetrator stays dirty. She's willing to sacrifice my health, my social life, and my future just to maintain the illusion that her daughter is okay. I started to realize that my mother's hygiene isn't just a physical issue. It's a manifestation of a deeper power play. She uses her smell to mark her territory. She uses it to push people away, so she never has to be challenged. And she uses it to test me. Every day I stay, every day I breathe it in without calling the police or social services, is a day I prove my loyalty to the family's sick code of silence. I've looked into moving out. I've looked into shelters, into couch surfing, into anything. But the reality is harsh. I'm 18, I'm in school, and I have no savings. In my country, the wait lists for social housing are years long. And if I leave, I lose the only thing I have, a roof. My grandmother would make sure of it. She'd see it as the ultimate betrayal, the shame of a family member choosing their own life over the needs of the mother. I'm stuck in a loop. I go to school, I pretend to be a normal teenager, I douse myself in perfume, and then I come home to the green cloud. I spend my evenings on my PC, living a digital life where the air is always clean and no one screams when you close a door. But when the screen goes dark, the reality hits me. The smell of the living room, the smell of her, is the first thing I encounter every morning and the last thing I encounter every night. I've stopped trying to help her. I don't buy the soaps anymore. I don't suggest the doctors. I've reached a point of total, hollowed out apathy. I'm just waiting. Waiting for what? I don't even know. Maybe for her to finally change her mind, though I know she won't. Maybe for my grandmother to see the truth, though she's blind by choice. Or maybe I'm just waiting for the day I finally break and do something that ruins my life just to get a breath of fresh air. The shame has become a part of my skin. I can't even invite a friend over to sit on the porch because I know the moment the front door opens, the secret will be out. I am the girl with the mother who reeks. I am the girl who lives in the stink house. And the worst part is, I'm starting to wonder if I'll ever be able to smell anything else. Even when I'm miles away, in a forest or by the ocean, I catch a phantom whiff of that sour, fermented rot, and my heart stops. It's like she's marked me, like I'm her property, and the smell is the brand. You ever see those old cartoons where a character is so dirty, they have a literal green cloud of flies and stink trailing behind them? As a kid, I thought that was just a joke, a gross exaggeration for a laugh. But now, I live with the real-life version of that character. My mother is that green cloud. It isn't just a smell, it's a presence that occupies the room before she even enters it. It's an invisible, suffocating wall that she pushes in front of her like a shield. And the most terrifying part isn't even the smell itself. It's the fact that she's perfectly fine with it. She's comfortable in her own rot. I call her a human amoeba. It's the only way to describe a person who has shed every human drive, every bit of ambition, and every ounce of self-respect. She doesn't exist. She just is. She sits in that bed day after day, year after year, her crooked leg propped up like a monument to her excuses. She doesn't cook, she doesn't clean, she doesn't even move unless it's to go from the bed to the bathroom or the bed to the car. She has essentially become a biological fixture of the house, like a mold that's grown so large it's starting to affect the structural integrity of the family. I remember once, about 6 months ago, we actually had to go somewhere together. It was for some legal paperwork, something she couldn't avoid. We had to get into the car. Now, the car is its own special kind of hell. Because she never cleans it and she spends so much time sitting in it when she does go out, the interior has absorbed her essence. It's a concentrated, pressurized version of her bedroom. I sat in the passenger seat, my knees pulled up, trying to touch as little of the upholstery as possible. The windows were rolled up because she doesn't like the draft. Within 5 minutes, I felt like I was being gassed. The smell of her unwashed hair, which I honestly think she only touches with water once every few weeks, was so thick I could almost taste it. It's a greasy, metallic scent that lingers on the tongue. She just sat there, staring at her phone, her thumb scrolling mindlessly through social media, totally oblivious to the fact that I was literally gasping for air 3 feet away. "Mom, can I please just crack the window?" I asked. I tried to sound casual, like it was about the temperature and not the fact that I was about to pass out. "No," she snapped, not even looking up from her screen. "It'll mess up my hair, and the smog outside is bad for my lungs." The irony was so sharp, I almost laughed. Her lungs? She was worried about the smog from a suburban street while sitting in a vehicle that smelled like a decomposing locker room. But that's her reality. She has created this bubble where she is the fragile, disabled victim who needs protection from the world, while the world and her daughter are the ones who need protection from her. When we got to the office building, we had to take the elevator. It was one of those small, mirrored ones. We stepped in, and a man in a suit got in right after us. I watched his face in the mirror. It was like watching a slow-motion car crash. First, there was the confusion. Then, the realization. Then, the physical recoil. He actually took a step back into the corner of the elevator, pulled his collar up over his nose, and stared at the floor numbers like they were a countdown to his execution. I wanted to die. I wanted to melt into the floorboards. I stood there, 18 years old, looking at my reflection next to hers. She looked like a person who had been lost in the woods for a month, greasy, disheveled, and surrounded by that invisible cloud. I looked like a normal girl, but I knew that to that man, we were one and the same. I was the girl who came with the smell. I was part of the stink unit. She has the emotional maturity of a 15-year-old, I told myself as we walked out. But even that feels like an insult to 15-year-olds. She's more like a toddler who has realized that crying and screaming are the most effective ways to get what they want. Whenever I try to bring up her hygiene in a normal way, you know, the way adults are supposed to talk, she shuts down. She doesn't just get defensive, she goes into a full-blown hysterical episode. "You're trying to humiliate me," she'll scream, her face turning that blotchy, unhealthy purple. "You're just like the people who make fun of me. You're supposed to be my daughter. You're supposed to love me." But how do you love someone who refuses to be a human being? How do you maintain a bond with someone who has rejected you since you were a child because you reminded them too much of your father? She's used that rejection as an excuse for years. Because I got along with my dad, I was the enemy. And now that he's gone, she's turned her self-neglect into a weapon against me. It's like she's saying, if you won't love me the way I want, I'll make sure you have to suffer through my existence. I've tried to understand her. I really have. I've read about depression, about executive dysfunction, about the psychology of self-neglect. I've tried to be the bigger person and the understanding daughter, but I'm done. I'm 18 and I'm already exhausted. I'm tired of being the only one who cares that our home is a biohazard. I'm tired of the gaslighting, the "it's all in your head" comments when I can literally see the grease on the walls. My friends have pointed it out. That was the final nail in the coffin of my social life. A few months ago, a friend I'd known for years finally sat me down and told me the truth. "We don't want to come over to your place anymore," she said, looking genuinely pained. "And honestly, sometimes, after we hang out with you, our clothes smell like your house. We like you, but we can't do it." I cried for 3 hours after that. Not because I was mad at her, but because she confirmed my worst fear. The green cloud wasn't just around my mother anymore. It was starting to follow me. It was on my skin, in my hair, in the fibers of my favorite sweaters. I am 18, and I am being branded by my mother's refusal to wash. And yet, I can't call for help. The extended family, my grandmother specifically, has made sure of that. She's the one who pays for the car, the apartment, the food that my mother eats while sitting in her nest. My grandmother is the enabler in chief. She's the one who tells me that I'm betraying the family if I even think about calling a social worker or a mental health crisis line. "We take care of our own," she says. But what she really means is, we hide our shame so I don't have to deal with the social fallout. She'd rather I spend my life as a shut-in, scrubbing floors that never get clean and breathing in rot, than have the neighbors know her daughter has mental issues. I feel like I'm living in a gothic horror novel. I'm the girl trapped in the crumbling manor with the madwoman in the attic. Except the madwoman is my mother. The attic is the bedroom 10 feet from my couch. And the crumbling is the slow decay of my own sanity. I look at her and I don't see a mother. I see a human amoeba that has consumed the person she used to be and is now slowly consuming me. People tell me to try to understand her. They say, she's sick. She needs help. But how do you help someone who screams at the sight of a bar of soap? How do you help someone who views a clean shirt as a personal attack? I've tried for years. I'm done trying. I just want to survive. I want to wake up in a room that smells like nothing. Just nothing. That's my dream. Not a mansion, not a tropical beach, just a room where the air is empty. The silence in our family is louder than the screaming. It's a heavy, thick kind of silence that feels like it's been aging in a cellar for 20 years. My grandmother, the saint who pays the bills, is the master of this silence. Once a month, she makes us come to her house for dinner. It's a ritual of forced normalcy that feels like a play where everyone has forgotten their lines, but continues to move around the stage anyway. Her house is the polar opposite of ours. It smells like lemon-scented bleach, expensive candles, and a hint of lavender. It's so clean it feels sterile, like a museum where you're afraid to breathe too hard. And then there's us, my mother and I. Before we go, there's the inevitable battle. It's the only time my mother even attempts to prepare. She doesn't shower, of course. That's a boundary she won't cross. but she spends 2 hours in front of a mirror with a bottle of dry shampoo and a thick layer of foundation. She tries to cover the gray, waxy sheen of her skin with makeup that's 3 shades too light. She pours an entire bottle of perfume over her unwashed clothes until she smells like a floral shop that's been built on top of a sewer. "Do I look okay?" she'll ask, her eyes wide and seeking, like a child asking for a gold star. "You look fine, Mom," I'll say, my voice dead. I don't tell her that the perfume is making my eyes water. I don't tell her that her hair is still matted at the back where she's been laying on it for 3 weeks. I just want to get it over with. At my grandmother's house, the performance begins. My mother sits on the edge of the pristine white sofa, her crooked leg propped up on a velvet ottoman, and she talks about how difficult things have been. She talks about her health issues in vague, sweeping terms that make her sound like a Victorian invalid. My grandmother nods, pouring tea with a steady hand, her face a mask of polite concern. They don't talk about the smell. They don't talk about the fact that my mother hasn't held a job in a decade. They don't talk about why I'm sleeping on a couch in the living room because the air in the hallway is too thick to move through. No, they talk about the weather, about distant relatives, about the shame of people who air their dirty laundry in public. I sit there, eating my dinner, and I feel like I'm disappearing. I look at my grandmother, this woman who has the power to change everything, and I realize she doesn't want to change it. She likes the control. She likes being the benefactor, the one who keeps the poor, disabled daughter afloat. It gives her a purpose, and in return, she demands my silence. She demands that I play the role of the dutiful granddaughter who helps her mother, while in reality, I'm just a maid who doesn't get paid, and a prisoner who hasn't committed a crime. "How is school, dear?" my grandmother will ask, her eyes flickering over me like she's checking for dust. "It's fine," I'll say. "You should be grateful your mother let you stay home to focus on your studies," she'll add, her voice sharpening. "Most girls your age would be working to support the household. You're lucky to have such a supportive family." Lucky. After those dinners, the car ride home is the worst. The perfume wears off, the saint mask slips, and my mother regresses back into the amoeba. The moment we cross the threshold of our apartment, she sheds the clean clothes, which will probably sit in a pile on her floor for the next 6 months, and crawls back into the greasy nest of her bed. The TV goes back on, the door stays open. The green cloud settles back into its familiar corners. I've realized that I'm not just fighting my mother's hygiene. I'm fighting a multi-generational legacy of enabling. My grandmother enabled my mother, and now they are both trying to force me into the same role. They want me to be the clean one who handles the world so my mother can stay dirty and safe in her room. They want to use my life to fuel her stagnation. I'm 18 now. In the eyes of the law, I'm an adult, but I don't feel like one. I feel like a ghost that's being haunted by a living person. I've started to have these vivid dreams where I'm standing in a shower and the water is so hot it's almost scalding, but it's not enough. I'm scrubbing and scrubbing and the water turning black at my feet, and no matter how long I stay under the spray, I can still hear her screaming through the bathroom door. "You think you're better than me. You think you're so clean." I wake up from those dreams and the smell of the room hits me like a physical blow. It's the smell of hopelessness. It's the smell of a life that's been put on hold indefinitely. Sometimes I look at the PC in the corner. It's the only thing in this house that's truly mine. It's my window to a world where mothers take care of their children, where houses smell like laundry and home-cooked meals, and where the air doesn't make you want to cry. I spend hours talking to people online, people who have no idea who I am or where I live. I tell them I'm a student. I tell them I like music. I never tell them about the woman in the other room. I never tell them that I'm writing this because I feel like if I don't put it somewhere, I'm going to suffocate. I've tried to look for a way out, but every door is locked by my grandmother's checkbook. If I leave, I'm betraying the family. If I stay, I'm losing myself. My mother doesn't care. She doesn't see the toll this is taking on me. She doesn't see the way I flinch when she walks past. She doesn't see the way I've stopped eating because the smell in the kitchen is too much to handle. To her, I'm just an extension of the furniture, something that's supposed to be there, something that's supposed to serve her, something that doesn't have a right to its own oxygen. I am ashamed to be her daughter. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's the truth. I'm ashamed of her, I'm ashamed of our house, and I'm ashamed of the fact that I'm not strong enough to just walk away and let the saint and the amoeba deal with each other. I feel like a coward for staying, and I feel like a monster for wanting to leave. But then, I'll have a moment of clarity. I'll be standing in the grocery store, breathing in the smell of fresh produce and floor wax, and I'll realize that this is what life is supposed to be. Life isn't supposed to be a constant struggle against a cloud of rot. Life isn't supposed to be a series of hysterical screams and gaslighting. I deserve to breathe. I deserve a door that can be closed. I deserve a life that doesn't require a bottle of peppermint oil under my nose just to get through the night. The smell is getting worse. I don't know if it's because she's getting older or because she's given up the last shred of effort she had left, but the air in the apartment is becoming toxic. I can't live like this for another year. I can't even imagine living like this for another month. The green cloud is winning, and if I don't find a way to break the silence, I'm going to be buried under it. The turning point didn't come with a bang. It came with a whisper on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. I was sitting at my PC, trying to focus on an assignment, but the smell was so thick that day, it felt like it was fogging up my brain. I could hear her in her room, not screaming, not crying, just existing. The TV was blaring some mindless game show, and I realized that in the 20 years I had known this woman, her contribution to the world could be measured in the volume of the television. Something inside me just snapped. It wasn't anger anymore. It was a cold, hard resignation. I looked around the living room, at the couch that doubled as my bed, at the stack of air fresheners I'd bought with my own lunch money, at the door to her room that was always open. And I knew, with a certainty that settled deep in my bones, that if I stayed here, I would die. Maybe not physically, but my soul, the part of me that still dreamed of a life with clean air and a closed door, would shrivel up and turn to dust. I stood up, walked to my backpack, and started packing. I didn't take much. A couple of changes of clothes, my school books, my laptop, and the small tin box where I kept the few $100s I'd managed to save up from odd jobs and birthday money. It wasn't a plan. It was a reflex. It was a survival instinct kicking in after years of being dormant. As I was zipping up the bag, she shuffled out of her room. The scuff thud of her crooked leg on the floor was like a countdown to the end of my life in this house. She saw the backpack. Her eyes, which were usually either vacant or filled with theatrical rage, narrowed into something I had never seen before, a flicker of genuine fear. "What are you doing?" she asked. Her voice was flat, devoid of the usual histrionics. "I'm leaving, Mom," I said. My voice was surprisingly steady. There were no tears, no yelling. I was just done. I can't live like this anymore. I can't breathe here. I can't be your caretaker, and I can't be your punching bag. I'm 18. I'm going to find my own life. The amoeba tried to fight back. Her face started to crumple. The tears welled up in her eyes. "You're abandoning me," she whimpered, clutching her leg like it was a shield. "You're just like your father. You're leaving me here all alone, a poor disabled woman." But this time, the performance didn't work. The cold, hard shell of my resignation was too thick for her emotional blackmail to penetrate. "You're not alone, Mom," I said, slinging the backpack over my shoulder. "You have your TV, you have your bed, and you have Grandma. She'll take care of you. She always has." I walked to the door. "But I'm not going to be the next one in line. I'm not going to spend my life waiting for you to take a shower. I love you, maybe, somewhere deep down under all of this. But I love myself more. I have to." I opened the door. The air from the hallway, which usually felt stale and depressing, smelled like a field of wildflowers. It smelled like freedom. She didn't scream. She didn't throw things. She just stood there in the middle of the living room, surrounded by her green cloud, and watched me leave. And as I walked down the hall, I didn't look back. I knew that if I did, the sheer weight of her misery might pull me back in. The first few weeks were hell. I spent my savings on a cheap motel room that smelled like old cigarettes and desperation, but it was the most beautiful smell in the world to me. I got a job at a coffee shop, working early mornings before school and late nights after. I was exhausted, I was scared, and I was completely, utterly alone. My grandmother called me once. She didn't ask if I was safe. She told me I had disgraced the family. She told me I was an ungrateful child. She told me the money had been cut off. I told her I knew, and I hung up. But something amazing happened. Without the constant, suffocating presence of the green cloud, my brain started to clear. I could focus on my schoolwork. I could talk to people without constantly sniffing my own sleeves. I made friends, real friends, the kind who invited me to their homes that smelled like cookies and clean laundry. I learned that a house could be a place of comfort, not a prison. About 6 months after I left, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was a social worker. Someone, a neighbor, I guess, had finally called about my mother. The social worker told me they had found her in the apartment, dehydrated, surrounded by filth, after the landlord had complained about the smell. My grandmother, it turned out, had continued to pay the rent, but had stopped visiting. She had washed her hands of the shame. The social worker asked if I would be willing to be her emergency contact. I hesitated for a long time. The old guilt, the old conditioning, tried to bubble up. "She's your mother. You should help her." "No," I said, my voice shaking but firm. "I can't. I spent 18 years trying to help her. She refused. I am not her caretaker. I am her daughter, and I am finally building my own life, a life where I can breathe." I heard that she was placed in a facility, one that could handle her complex mental and physical needs. I heard that they had to condemn the apartment, that the smell had seeped into the drywall. I haven't seen her since I walked out that door. Sometimes, at night, I feel a pang of something, not love, not pity, but a kind of sad, distant memory of the woman she could have been. But then I take a deep breath. I breathe in the air of my own small, clean apartment, an apartment I pay for with my own money. I breathe in the smell of the coffee I just brewed, the smell of the open window, the smell of nothing. And I know I made the right choice. Breaking a cycle of abuse and neglect is one of the hardest things a person can do, especially when your family is the one holding the chains. My story is about a smell, but it's really about the invisible poison of a family that values its image over its own children. It took me 18 years to realize that my survival was more important than their secrets. And I wonder, if you were in my shoes, breathing in that rot day after day, would you have left sooner? Would you have stayed? Let me know in the comments below, because stories like these are a reminder that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away and choose to breathe. And if you want to hear more stories about breaking free, make sure you subscribe, because everyone deserves a life with an open window.